points. So, good morning, Ricardo. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So, let's start with your presentation.
Okay, thanks. Thanks to you especially. I think that there is no much more to say about me. So I think you said a lot. I mean, it always sounds that what they said about us ourselves is too much. And anyway, hi, good morning and good afternoon for the most, I guess. As Javier says, I'm an architect who practices in Córdoba, Argentina at this moment. And I must say, I know the professional research. And you will see, I am not a professional researcher, it said. But I've been always very curious one, an architect very curious one, who always thought that the sources for learning architecture were everywhere. And that's why I guess my dear friend Javier honored me with this invitation. More than the book, he says, I hope. I will put some pictures so you don't have to see me. I think it's, I hope they will look nicer. Just, let me see if you, can you see them? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So thank you, Javier. Thank you, Joaquin, and thanks to the rest of this nice staff you're working on in Venice. I hope to not disappoint you. But, my essay, my little essay about James Turrell, an artist we share our kind of affinities with Javier since a long time ago. Yes. At the beginning, I would like to kind of apologize that I have decided to write the presentation, and I will read it in part. I'm sorry, it's not my usual procedure to do it, especially when I'm talking about my things. But talking about an artist, and especially in this kind of format, which is more probably an essay, I count with a confidence after the recommendation that says of two very lovely friends, which are Italo Calvino and Wim Wenders. And I thought if they did it in order to adjust as much as possible the thoughts to the words, why shouldn't I? And so my presentation will be in this way, which it doesn't mean that you can interrupt me, or you can't make questions, or in the way or in the format you consider the best to do it. On the other hand, as you already understand my English, know my best language, certainly. Okay, let's begin. I'd like to talk about the affinities before. It is not hard to feel seduced by James Turrell's works. At first sight, they arouse tranquility, harmony, serenity, and we could also say they inspire introspection. For us architects, there is more. They appear created by the affinity and the parallel drum between the material nature of his work and our work. Even the way in which he carries them out, his Turrell, seems to be much like our planning and execution process. We imagine, we plan, we draw, and then we build. Turrell works, just like ours, are planned and intend to be built at one place. That means there are no transportable objects. And also, as in architecture, any reproduction of his works, if it has not been experienced, will only be a nice photograph. Again, in the same way as in architecture, his works involve space, environment, and light, and thus interaction, experience, and time. Curators of Turrell's exhibitions agree on the fact that the amount of time the audience spent on his works extends over 30 minutes, whereas they only dedicate a maximum of 3 minutes to a traditional canvas, or just a few seconds. Those facts about time and experience, which can be associated with the tactile and optical perception that Walter Benjamin describes in order to state the difference between architecture and the rest of the arts, is not a matter of detail. Regarding the similarities, we will discuss. Excuse me. James Turrell states that his works have no focus and no object. He doesn't even consider seeing as a purpose of his work. He would rather talk about exploration. Therefore, we could say that Turrell's final interest, when no object is left, is in the subject. And that subject who explores is precisely the man, the only capable one of doing it. And we can say that we're talking about a very specific man, the modern man. Or I would like to be talking about the modern man. The one who was born during the scientific revolution in the 1500s. But above all, the one who came out as a byproduct of Auschwitz and Hiroshima. That is the man who was assumed to own the universe, even though being alone in the face of the universe, the stories and myths in which the man had taken refuge had faded away. The modern man is being represented here in two ways, which are similar and opposing at the same time. One, the first you see on the left, by Caspar Friedrich Wanderer, and the other, just by a visitor at Koenig's Case Study House number 32 in California. They represent, they're authentic modern men who can be barely held by their own bodies, almost floating with no reference or supports. No frame contains them anymore. No narrations contain them. They represent, however, the subject whose explorations Turrell is trying to encourage. James Turrell work spreads out from the late 60s with his first solo exhibition called Projection Pieces. And in spite of the variety displayed by his near 20 series on his webpage, the common thread that connects them seems to be his persistence, if not obsession, regarding the changes in perception. Besides Rod and Crater, his magnum opus, which I heard it was very well introduced by Agostino earlier, and considering the available amount of time, I suppose we have, I have decided to focus on two very special series, which can provide the basis for a hypothesis, maybe provisional, about James Turrell works. I'm saying this while waiting that all this picture of his series are going through. These series are sky spaces, the first pictures we've seen, and Gansfeld, the second one. And the hypothesis says a considerable part of Turrell's work is about building windows that, according to their nature, make it possible for the modern man's sensitive field to be taken to an extreme, to the point of encouraging existential questions. The most primitive concept of a window might refer to a hole through which light and sometimes sight can pass. And although many fashions shape it in different ways during time, its essence remains. If we take a look at most of James Turrell's works, we can easily associate them with that object. From his first approaches to the arts and his first exhibition, Projection Pieces, consisted firstly in completely darkening the chamber to the natural light of the Mendiota Hotel in Ocean Park. The projections, which looked like a volume holographic construction, in the end were those floating volumes turned into windows. Oops, Scarpa was here as well. However, in order to better understand a window or the absence of it in this context, we should go back to the two helpless characters we mentioned before. The Königsstall house, where our visitor is sitting on the edge of the swimming pool, is mostly known because of this famous photograph taken by Julius Schulman, which is probably the most symbolic image of the modernity of the American dream and the pragmatism of the post-war period. If we pay attention, it is interesting to see that, just like in the first photograph of the lonely visitor, these ladies are still floating with no ground and no windows, in a void that seems to need commercial objects in order to be complete, to be valuable. If it weren't for the lamps and furniture brought by Pierre Koenig minutes before the photos were taken at the barely finished house, we would be looking at the ladies levitating in space. On the other hand, through some kind of metamorphosis, our other lonely character, the wanderer about the sea of fog, immersed in the 19th century romanticism, will be replaced by the artist a few years later with another painting called Woman at the Window, where he used his wife as model and put a limit on the canvas, on the vastness. Casper restricts the view of the sublime to the extent allowed by the frame and what the subject wants to focus on. That is, the image is produced by the interaction between the subject and the frame, which creates an experience where the subject, the environment, the frame, and the background are interdependent. As we can see, a few years later, Edward Hopper would take this formula to a level where the day-to-day is elevated to a metaphysical situation, which brings us even closer to the spatial configurations of James Turrell's works. In terms of the spectator being immersed in the first environment, facing a perfectly delimited whole towards a second environment, that will be perceived or explored, in his own words, according to the interaction produced between both of them. I say I would illustrate this small hypothesis using two series. And I'm going to start with the one called Sky Spaces. In approaching this series, I will go along with Matisse, who based a great part of his canvas production on windows, and who might be able to help us understand the phenomenon that occurs when we experience sky spaces. I must say that many others well-known painters used the windows as support, or the frame as support, for some of their compositions, as you see here. But I guess no one with the perseverance of Matisse. One of the most famous works by Matisse was the windows in Helg from 1905. And without diving too deep into historical analysis, we can state that the richness of the landscape seen through the window is all in the same plane as the frame and its surrounding, which doesn't take away any value. Turrell's sky spaces have similar characteristics. The artist's work lies in setting up the environment first in a way that what is seen through the window can be taken as a figure that can be perceived in the same depth plane. Let us analyze that. Sky spaces are made up of chambers, some of which are even open with a calibrated aperture in the ceiling, which, without any obstacles, allows us to see the sky, perfectly delimited by plane geometry, square, round, oval. It is predetermined that visitors will stand in a position where the thickness of the ceiling disappears to the hardening construction detail. As a result, we get the image of the blue vault with all its atmospheric and chromatic variations, and the passage of time and seasons. All of this can be perceived from a distance of about 4 to 6 meters, depending on how high the ceiling is. We perceive the sky, but no more like a immeasurable sky. That is, its vastness seems to be domesticated by the proximity of the immediate plane of our surroundings. I thought we could easily imagine an Andrea Mantegna stream coming through. But the old master had this first physical demonstration already at home. As you may know, the second picture is from his private courthouse in Mantua. In 1914, 9 years later, Matisse painted the window at color again. A very different version, we can see, through which he seems to have provided us with a cover to start discussing the second series, the Ganzfeld. Ganzfeld is a German word to describe the phenomenon of the total loss of depth perception, as in the experience of a whiteout. And it involves chambers that are set up with such light, quality, and materials that the edge became invisible. These are, unlike the previous series and configurations, where the two chambers that made up the piece were clearly separated. One of them meant for performance, and the second one to irradiate a light that is so homogeneous that it seems to be a two-dimensional plane of light, unless you fairly dare to take your hand through that imaginary limit. The Ganzfeld series allows us to experience them with our whole body, and this is no less important. Whereas the first work made us be mentally transported, these later ones go on to transfer us physically. We could compare this experience with the one of Alice through the looking glass, as we saw. Or even better, it feels like being the astronaut in Gravity, where all reference are lost. Really Ganzfeld. On the other hand, when we think of all these analogies, just as fascination with Boulez becomes clear to us. The intention behind the cenotaph for Newton were not too different from those of the Gansfelds. Dimensions, geometry, and calibrated light were the tools used by the revolutionary architect in order to pay homage to the Newtonian absolute space. 300 years later, James Turrell uses almost the same features to make human face the unfathomable aspect of their existence. And at the end, because of all of this, and to round off, not as a conclusion, but rather as a wish, I would like to think that this whole path of James Turrell's windows is a way of manifesting, or maybe raising awareness about the existential void that was so accurately and maybe innocently portrayed in the 60s Schulman photograph. Thank you. No sé cómo volver. Ahí está.
Okay,
¿Está la
Ricardo?
cámara ahora?
Yes, that's it. All right.
Okay.
Well, let's see if we have questions from the participants, if anybody wants to or comments. It's open for everybody. You know, I was thinking during your presentation in especially one point that to me it is very important. We know the participation of art in the history of architecture, like a sculpture, like an object in the architecture. Okay, but in this case, in the case of James Turrell, we are looking at architecture like a machine of art, isn't it?
Is it a question?
It's a common question. Whatever
okay,
you want.
okay, okay. Yeah, I'm agree with you, and also Turrell repeatedly said that he doesn't work with objects, as I said. He's not interested in work with objects. His really subject is exploration, and exploration, I guess, must be or can be get with some features, but the features he decided to use was always not the objectual thing, but the said intervention or architectural thing. That's why also our affinity with him and with his work, because most of the features he used are similar to ours. I'm agree with you. We could talk also about many other artists contemporary to him in those times, like Dan Flavin, for example, Bob Wilson, great Bob Wilson, but also very contemporary and fashionable artists like Anish Kapoor or Ellison, which works also in this surrounding. Anyway, I insist very much in my to say that the thing that at least for me was most interesting in James Turrell is the construction of windows. Because if you see the way to reframe this perception, it's really work. It's really fantastic work because it changed all the reality you are perceiving through it. And it's taking, and that's the hypothesis. I think it's taking this new reality perceived in that way to demand to have those questions which exceed the only aesthetic point to the existential.
Ricardo, you are talking about a window concept. So, but don't we have to talk about a portal for new generations? Because, you know, we are old school. So we call window, but many of these works are like it's the experimentation of a real portal in a digital way.
That is very interesting what you're saying, Javier, because it's not digital. He did it physically. That is the first point. That is physically. And the second about the window or the portal, as I said, or I tried to say, probably it wasn't so clear, but this disappear of the old school window, I should say, so present in the Schulman photo of the case study house, represents very, very well this modern man who lost all his possibilities to be connected or to be focused, they said, or to be focused. So the disappear that modern architecture without windows, as we know, as we made, and so on, it would be probably associated with.
Okay, Joaquin, do we have questions, comments in the messages box? So if there is no more question to make it longer, we can pass to the classroom.
Yes, no, at the time there are no questions, but if anyone wants to speak or to make an opinion or a reflection, we invite everybody to open freely the camera and the mic and just do it if there's someone. If not, maybe Ricardo told me that he has also another presentation, short presentation about how this kind of reflection between art and architecture goes into a complete project.
So, yeah, of course. If you want to get shot, probably that can open our interaction. As it says, it's a very short, very short presentation, but I thought it was interesting to have it here because. Because it's a way that we are talking with the students making their thesis, this master thesis or master work, and to try to associate or to relationate how that means to understand or to feel comfortable or to just understand, I would say this is the word, the work of an artist. And that work of an artist can be, I wouldn't say translate, but at least being on the imaginary of our way of work, of our some of our way of works at least, and that's why I pick up this old project for a memorial to the Berlin Wall I did in '93, and I always show it. Very shortly, because just trying to see the connections or the most direct connections with the just things we have been seeing. The war was. Are you the?
Yes. Go ahead. We can see it.
I don't know what. Okay, here. I was living in Germany in September '89 when the Berlin Wall falls down, and in the '93, so many things happened in those times, and in '93 they called for a competition to build a Gedenkstätte, will be in German, a memorial for the Berlin Wall, and I began to a kind of exploration, which consists in these things, as you say here, probably not so clear, but it is how this using a window again. And without knowing that the window will become a kind of obsession thing. You see the window in a way that its ability for reflection, because the reflection of the window taken that way, those are all tests, pictures, tests I made with the glass, put it on somewhere in Frankfurt, and to move the reality, so to change the reality we were looking, and to move that reality to our place. Those research allows me to go forward with the concept for the memorial. This probably you will understand better. These two ones, which are a little bigger, as you see, the reality can can change the inclination, the degree of inclination of the glass could reflect the sky or another landscape or another place, another reality, if we look at metaphysically. But mainly, they have also, when we talk about glass and not talking about mirror glass, I'm not talking about a mirror, we have the possibility to explode a little better this. And as soon as the light goes through the glass, the transparency is taking part of it, and it's changing this reality, transported reality, into a normal reality which is behind. And I think, certainly unconsciously in that moment, that James Turrell work was a huge influence in this work for me. That is the project of the memorial for the Berlin Walls. I don't want to go deep in explaining it, but the final idea was to have this path going through a garden, a very skeptical garden, to the wall, to the remains wall, which were something like 400 meters long. And as soon as you arrive, as soon as you reach that point where it's supposed to be that tourists and curious want to see the wall, the old wall, the really old Berlin Wall, they will find this, which is a section of those paths we have been seeing on the photo. We will be seeing this, which is a glass, or if you want, an obliquous window. Put it in front of the Berlin Wall, what you see on the back. On the back is a section of the Berlin Wall, and this path transversal to the wall arrive some meters before the wall, allowing us to perceive a kind of reality which is not the wall, at exception when the light from behind the glass is taking more importance, and so the glass became transparent. This is the idea I was trying to touch you. As soon as I get closer, at the end, I can finally see. The Berlin Wall. Okay. Thanks. That was what I prepared for this, just to have a little appendix. I hope you enjoyed. Are you there?
Yes, we are here.
Okay.
Very nice. Interesting. Very interesting. It's very interesting because, as you know, we have students sharing with us that are searching for to start a thesis. So going to be important if some of them can participate doing questions or comments, because the project that you show us is a real little project of how to do from the lesson of James Turrell, a practical work. So now it is open for everyone who wants to participate, please.
I guess sometimes, sorry, it's something.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I guess when one think, what is the point to read Borges? To read Borges for learning architecture, or what is the application, the direct application of reading Borges or Calvino or Eco or whoever you really trust? And I think it's the same answer as you said about James Turrell. I'm also love the work of Richard Serra, for example, and the problem is always for me, and especially talking with my students, that the analogies, so the analysis work, or this construction of thoughts, of knowledge, it shouldn't be direct. It shouldn't be direct. It should go through the filter. Otherwise, it will be only an imitation. So that's why at the beginning of my exposition, I said, I'm not a researcher. I'm not a professional researcher. I'm mainly a curious architect who believes in the sources of architecture are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, Jonathan, it's wants to participate. Okay, go ahead, Jonathan.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was nice. Yes. And my question, or maybe I'm quite curious, during the first presentation about the Lorengrata project by James Turrell, you showed about the influence of Ledoux Graydon House. Yes, so I want to maybe you could highlight more what are those influences? Is it just with regard to the shape of the James Turrell Observatory, or maybe there is something more?
Just one thing, Jonathan. You were talking about Boulez, or
Yes.
Just I understood Ledoux. So I think it's similar what we were talking seconds ago about which kind of, what kind of artist and previous experience influences us in our way to do things. I think the influence of Boulez in Turrell. At first, I have to say I'm not such a doctor on the item to give you a perfect explanation. But I would say that his affinity, as I said, idea of the absolute space, which in the cenotaph of Newton he expresses in the best way. And I think without that cenotaph, I'm not so sure that James Turrell would have gone through the window finally to get to the gun fields. So to be inside, physically inside there. And also affinities, formal affinities, certainly. Formal affinities and aesthetic affinities are always behind us. We can perceive them.
Okay.
I don't know. That's a question.
Yeah, you have. I think I've gotten my answer. The absolute space. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's interesting because we've learned about James Turrell, maybe for me, but I've not heard of any sort of the Boule connection. So it's me the first time, and yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, thank you.
And Jonathan, you have to think that the experience of space is amazing, and it was amazing with Boule. Even he could not build almost nothing. So as you know, he did all those beautiful drawings in the ending 1700, and it was published in middle 20th century. So it was astonished. We have seen it. But anyway, the influence is marvelous.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Another one? If there is no more questions, we can have a rest to Ricardo and continue with our work class, because okay. All right, Ricardo, thank you very much, my friend, for your presentation. Was a pleasure. Really was a very
inspiring
nice presentation. I enjoyed very much. So see you always.
We see as always. Fortunately. And
Okay.
I have to thank you and thanks everyone who could be there.
One more question before you. Do you think that art is a taboo for architecture right now?
No, for the contrary. I would say more than the taboo is, for me, the most dangerous thing is not a taboo. It's a cliche. Because the art is
we don't talk about art.
I have so many noises. I don't know if there are many people with it.
No, I think that we are used to talk. We like to talk more about technology or whatever than art. We are used to hear in the most of the presentations I don't know, many things, but not only technology, environment, and you know, many things. But art is a little bit forgotten. I don't know.
I think I understand what you said, Javier. I think I understand. But I think there is, at least for me, a misunderstanding. What we make is art. What we make is art. With the technique, with the responsibility of society, with the responsibility of environment, with many responsibilities that have to be with our ethic or moral point of view. But anyway, as architects, we make art. We make art. The problem what I wanted to tell you before was that when the art is being reduced to an Instagram picture and to a reproduced object as an Instagram picture, that is, it makes me a little scared. Because that's I try to say this to you, that the analysis, to work with analysis art, with Piva, with music, with literature, it is fantastic. It is super necessary to do it. The problem is not translate. It's no go in darkness. It's just use it to make more dense our thoughts and our knowledge to then be applied, and it will be applied with art. We don't have a form to apply that in architecture without art. It's a kind of art. It's not the Duchamp fontaine. No, of course, it's not a Duchamp fontaine. It is a pre-conceptual, even the most conceptual probably in art, or Malevich, let's say. But what we do is art. Javier, I will be very, and you should be very proud of it, because you're always talking about technique, but what you do with the technique is really art in your architecture.
I lost the Joaquin.
Yes, I'm here.
Está frozen. Esto, the sound is.
No. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You hear me? Okay.
But okay. Well,
you missed
Ricardo again.
The most beautiful part. Ricardo,
okay.
sending love.
Pardon.
I lost the last part of your.
But I say I will repeat it, because it's not a compliment. It's really, as you know, a very sincere thing I say about you and your way to work. That even if you're talking mostly, or you were talking mostly about technical solutions, what you do in architecture, your architecture, is art, and it's a very high level art, using techniques, using many other things, but it's art. Javier, I will always feel.
I hope. Well, Ricardo, again, thank you very much. Have a nice rest of the day, and see you soon.
See you soon. Thanks a lot to you.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Joaquin.
Big hug. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Joaquin, I think we have how much time do we have?
An hour and a half. So
an hour and a half.
Yes. So
Okay.
we to our classroom channel.
Yes. Well, it is important to restart the communication with us, and let's see where you are now. To us, it's important to check the two initial point of who and what, and we can